Hello, my name is Britton Smith, and I am the president and co-founder of the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. I am humbled by this moment in our history that has brought us all together. This moment has forced us all to look at the oldest, ugliest actions and behaviors of racism within our community. It's forced us to say, enough, see us, we matter. We're usually in much smaller spaces together surrounding the work and the accomplishments of the make-believe that we create. Today, we are nearly 5,000 people gathered here to listen to reality. This is not a play designed to move you. This is not a set of monologues written to stir your beliefs, but this is a mirror. This is reality. This is an opportunity to look at ourselves and acknowledge the bullshit, the racism, and demand that it no longer be normalized. This moment is scary. I'm personally terrified. And I acknowledge that I tend to speak differently when I know that white people are listening. So I'm nervous. I know you're out there. And I, in this moment, am going to advocate for my most authentic self, to be present, to keep it real, to be myself. The Broadway Advocacy Coalition has been doing the work to use the arts as a critical tool in humanizing the voices of those most directly affected by the criminal justice system. And we've been doing this work since 2016. We began as a bunch of artists during Shuffle Along who decided that we needed to figure out how to be valued off stage the way we felt on stage. This particular forum that you're a part of is a 3-day forum, and it began only 11 days ago. And I'm so proud of everybody that's been a part of this process with us. But we all know that this is the beginning of a longer, tedious, uncomfortable, necessary process of conversations between those in positions of power and those most directly affected by racism in our industry. Day one of this forum allowed beauty to be centered. It allowed the Black industry members a chance to be together, dance together, mourn together, challenge the holds of white supremacy together, and remember the strength within our ancestral blood that reminds us to continue to challenge the equality now, challenge the standard now, realize the moment now. And I want to take a moment right now to acknowledge a story that was shared yesterday. We didn't have the time to hold you, brother. We didn't have the time to sit with you in your pain. And if you're listening right now, I want you to know that I feel your pain. And I acknowledge that some of the people who probably pained you are listening on this conversation right now. So we stand with you. We feel you. We love you. And I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm showing up today very differently than I did yesterday. I'm more nervous, and I'm trying to push through a lot of pain. And I know that I want a safe space, but I'm not confident that everybody listening will be on my side. So I also want to acknowledge that I and every speaker on this program is risking something in honor of honesty, humanity, and restoring justice back into our community. White allies and institutions, I want you to stop where you are and inhale and exhale. I want you to relax your shoulders and sit for a moment in gratitude for all of the labor that has gone into this moment. We don't owe you this. You are blessed to hear from us. We have worked through pain to produce this. We are still hurting. We are still fighting. So I want to sit in gratitude and give you the chance to do that with us. You owe us gratitude. Thank you. You can no longer return to your boardrooms and casting offices, educational institutions, and deny your understanding now. Today is about listening and allowing that listening to place you in a new space of individual accountability. Tomorrow is about holding our institutions accountable, our leaders accountable, and acknowledge that this is a unique opportunity, all of us on this space right now. And I don't want this opportunity to be lost. Your presence here acknowledges a willingness to admit that there is an issue of racism in our industry and a commitment to do something about it. I'm going to turn it over to Michaela Bartholomew, who will be co-facilitating this day with me today. She's going to give us guidelines and teach us ways of listening. You look beautiful, Michaela. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Britton. I want to take a deep breath with you and say thank you for everything you shared, because all of the nerves and the fears that you just laid out for everyone is exactly how I'm feeling. So I affirm you. I am with you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being in this space. Right now, we're going to take some time to set some community guidelines, some standards for us. So I know a lot of us are being active listeners today. And so I just want to set a precedent so that we can enter into a sacred and protected space. This space is for listening, understanding, and healing, an opportunity to take responsibility and accountability for any and all behaviors, both individual and institutional, that conflict with the idea that Black lives matter, and commit ourselves to creating more equitable, inclusive, and safe spaces. We ask that you enter with open minds, open hearts, and open ears. Please leave your egos, titles, and any spirits of offense at the door and lean in. We acknowledge that the heinous murders of innocent and unarmed Black men and women at the hands of police and the subsequent protests, marches, and riots have awakened our nation to what most of us have known, seen, and lived for far too long. We are grateful for the work of our brothers and sisters organizing in our communities on our behalf. Their labor has made it possible for us to be here today. We believe that those who are the most directly affected by the varied levels of systemic oppression should be allowed to speak and be heard first when cultivating policies and actions of reform. We are asking many to reopen wounds and relive traumas in an effort to help members of our industry understand their role in creating work environments that have been abusive, hostile, stifling, unsafe, and racist. To all of my brothers and sisters, you are seen, heard, and affirmed. We welcome and encourage all constructive ideas, thoughts, and experiences to be shared without judgment or fear of future consequences. I will say that again. We welcome and encourage all constructive ideas, thoughts, and experiences to be shared without judgment or fear of future consequences. We know that there are hundreds, thousands right now of different voices, opinions, and experiences in this room that all want and deserve to be heard. We've provided opportunities for some to speak and share, but unfortunately, there is just not enough time to address everyone. We encourage you to send your thoughts on social media and email or join the Outer Space Room after the forum. We know that the bulk of our work must be done outside of this forum and to begin making necessary changes within our industry. We ask that you remain present and patient with us as we take careful steps to ensure accountability. We also acknowledge that much of the work done in this space may be challenging and uncomfortable, and 90 minutes is only enough time to begin to unpack years of pain, silence, and suffering. To that end, we have created a post-forum breakout room offering additional mental and emotional support for your needs. We welcome both humility and discomfort, for it is at the crest of those two that an opportunity for growth and change lies. So let's get into it. I'm going to go over the Darvill method, shared very boldly by Rachel Cargill, who is an activist. This method of listening and psychological manipulation was developed by Jennifer Freyd in 1997 in her essay of Violations of Power, Adaptive Blindness, and Betrayal Trauma Theory. Darvill stands for D for deny, A for attack, and the RVO stands for reverse victim oppressor. I want to highlight this method of listening for all of my white allies, individual and institutional, tuning in tonight. If at any point you see or you feel in the pit of your stomach the need to deny the behavior, to dismiss the disparity and the inequitable treatment of Black bodies, which will be shared in these experiences today, or attack the individual doing the confronting and sharing. This concept of blindness to the reasons uprising is occurring is an attempt to gaslight the Black community into believing that they aren't justified in their outrage and their genuine attempts to enact meaningful and permanent change. That's what we're doing here today. So if you feel the need to deny or attack, take a moment, acknowledge it, allow it the space to breathe. Write it down if you have a pen and paper nearby so that you can return later to reflect on what the source of that feeling is. For reverse victim oppressor, oftentimes the oppressor will try to become the victim of the Black experience and treat it as a violence or inconvenience. The stories that are about to be shared with us today are not violence. Violence is committed against our white community. Sorry, I have dogs. They are not violences committed against the white community, but instead are actual experiences of trauma and pain that we have had to live with and keep silent for far too long. So if there's any moment where you find yourself trying to reverse the shoes, change your mind, reframe your attitude, and lean in so that we can give space and honor to our Black brothers and sisters today as they share. So once again, Darvill method, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. We want to not lean into that style of listening today. We want to let that live on the other side of this space. Thank you so much. I challenge you to sit up, adjust your posture, because I was just sitting like a banana, edge of your seat, and lean in. Thank you. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, Michaela. I'm looking forward to this panel. Looking forward.
I am too.
I also want to acknowledge our signers here. Thank you so much, Jen and Elizabeth. Appreciate you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's bring them in.
All right. So I'm so excited. I don't know how anybody is feeling right now other than myself because I am in my body. But we have Amber Iman, Daniel Watts, and Cody Renard, who, like, these are names in the industry that matter and are important. And right now we're about to, I guess, kick off a conversation between the four of us to basically examine what it's been to be a Black person in this industry, the theater industry. So thank you, Amber, Cody, and Daniel, for taking the time to share space. Hey, y'all. I'm looking forward to getting into this. So I'm going to do a little introduction first, because if people don't know who you guys are in the audience, they should. Starting off with Miss Amber Iman. I don't know how to name all of the credits you have because there are so many. A Howard University alum, as well as a Helen Hayes nominee. She's been all over the place and is quite literally, I think, one of the brightest lights that shine in the Broadway community, as well as of course, a voice on that Off-Book podcast by Broadway Black. She is the voice of reason and wisdom, and we're so happy to have you, Amber. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Of course. Cody Renard, runner for AEA Council, is a production stage manager who has well over, I believe, 12 Broadway credits alone, from Hamilton to Freestyle Love Supreme to Kinky Boots, as well as NBC's Jesus Christ Superstar Live. the Tony Awards. Things just go on and on and on for you, Cody. So I'm so thankful that you're taking the time. I just watched you on CNN a couple of days ago, and
thank you. I am grateful to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. Mr. Daniel Watts, the creator of the Jam. Welcome. We are so happy to have you here. You've been making spaces for us to take up space for so long, so it's an honor and a privilege to have you here.
Oh, all mine. Pleasure's all mine.
Yes. If y'all know about Mr. Daniel Watts, he is also on The Last OG, in addition to his, I think, 8 some odd Broadway credits from Hamilton to Memphis to My Lord. Y'all all have resumes that I am aspiring to. So thank you guys for being here. Y'all ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm gonna be transparent and honest here. I'm sweating. But there are some incidents that have happened in our society as of late that are bringing us here today. So I guess I want to kick off the conversation by saying, what about this present moment with the losses of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Nina Pop, Tony McDade, Ahmaud Arbery, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic, that has made you all willing to share your experiences of racism within the theater industry?
I'll kick it off because, this time for me has been extremely trying and extremely crazy. I went, from having Corona to dealing with the mental effects of that to seeing countless people continuously being killed on TV and no one being held accountable for that. And just sitting in those thoughts and sitting in the darkness, there were countless days when I felt like I couldn't get out of bed. And those of you who know me know I'm a very joyous person. I lead with joy and hope. And but there were days when I couldn't get out of bed. And there was one day I was laying in bed and I was crying. And I was like, I have to say something about what I've been experiencing in my own industry, because it's hard for me to hear people speak about how they don't understand this is happening to Black people being killed and not realize that on a much smaller level, we're dealing with microaggressions and racism in our own industry. So I felt the need to speak out and just shine a light and hopefully open up people's eyes, because it makes it personal when you speak directly to them.
Did Amber or Daniel, if you guys would like to jump in, hop in. It's like a conversation. We're just talking here.
Yeah, similar to Cody, I'm pointing. I don't know where he is, and everybody went up. You over there?
No.
I found that my own personal silence was getting to me. It's a combination of the Broadway shutting down, the country shutting down, everything shutting down allowed me opportunity to kind of disappear in a way that I didn't feel like I had license to leading up to it. And then, so it was just a pandemic. And then the news of Ahmaud got around, and it's a thing that Black folks know around this time of year is when they start, these hashtags start happening. So I felt it. I was like, oh, it's getting warm. And people shouldn't really even be outside that much because we're on lockdown. So, to hear that not only Ahmaud, but Breonna, and then George, and a lot of people minding their own business in a way that I was like, I'm used to saying something. I haven't said anything, mainly because I've said all of this before. There's not really anything that I can say that I haven't said before. Because I can't breathe is the same thing. I can't breathe. And, looking suspicious while being in somebody's neighborhood is the same way that Trayvon and Eric Garner died, is the same way that George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery died. And then Breonna, which is literally asleep in her home, is the same way Bartham John died. It's like they're all the same. And I'm about to say something, but the people who I need to hear it and the people who I need to say something haven't said anything before, so why do I expect them to say this? So I found myself being wrestling with my own silence and why I should speak and why I shouldn't speak, and eventually I just did. But it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
I think that word exhausted is the most pertinent word for I think a lot of our lives right now. It's so present that we wake up exhausted. I can't imagine, Cody, what it was like to, go from having the virus to barely being able to get out of the bed to all of a sudden we are in a new era of civil rights, which really never ended when it started. You know, those fights have been joking for years. Wow, twice as long as I've been alive. So, um, I think highlighting that is really important, Daniel, especially with the mind that we've said all of this before, and the people we needed to say something now, we didn't expect them to. So I thank you for taking that exhaustion and being like, you know what, I'm going to step into it anyways. I really do appreciate that. Miss Amber.
How are you? Do you want me to speak to that question as well?
It's up to you. If you didn't have anything, if you feel like you were articulating those too, I'm
Daniel said it. We're exhausted.
Whipped.
We're exhausted. It's a burden that none of us signed up to take on, but it's just a part of being Black in America.
No, that's true. I think like that rolls really well into, I guess, playing the game, double consciousness, masking, how we kind of have to occupy two spaces on a daily basis. And for those of you who may not know, double consciousness is a theory that was developed by W.E.B. Du Bois. But there's this game that it seems like we have to play, a mask that we have to put on every day to interact with those in our industry that we don't necessarily think understand what's happening to Black life in America. So I'm wondering how you guys find yourselves navigating white spaces in the industry, and what does that do to your mental health?
I have to speak to a very personal experience that Cody was present for. A few years ago, I was in the second day of rehearsal for a show, pre-Broadway Lab, and a white stage manager who I did not know walked up to me. I looked just like this, and he reached out and touched my hair and said, "Woo, your hair is looking wild today. Do you need a brush? Or are you going to leave it like that?" And I was immediately put in a space. I can't even describe what it felt like. I just know that I had to walk immediately into the rehearsal space. And the first thing that I did is what most of us Black people do when we find ourselves as the only in a space. I ran to the two people who looked like me. Cody was the assistant stage manager, and the late Eric Lawan Summers was in the ensemble. I was the only Black woman in the entire space. Front of the table, behind the table, there were no other Black women around. And I said, guys, I just went through something, and I don't know if I'm overreacting or if it was really bad. And I told Cody, and I just remember Cody's eyes. And immediately the stage manager called rehearsal to start back. So there was no time to process. There was no time to call anyone. I always laugh because we don't have an HR department, and usually your stage management is your HR. And what do you do when the HR and the stage management are the same? And the stage manager is the one who just said something that is absolutely ridiculous to you in your place of work. And I remember going home, and I got on Facebook, and the question that I asked my friends was, I'm just trying to find out how to be a Black woman in this space. I wasn't doing anything when you said it to me. I wasn't being loud. I was making tea. And that was my mindset. I was like, tell me, God, what do I need to do? What do I need to change? I woke up the next morning and I didn't know what to do with my hair. I was like, maybe I should straighten it. What should I wear? I wore shoes that were shorter. I literally tried to do everything to shrink my appearance and who I was because I just did not want to be bothered. I wanted to be given the same opportunity that white people get, which is just to go to work. When I walk into a space as the only Black woman, I feel like I'm carrying an entire race of Black women on my shoulders. I don't want to speak too loudly. I don't want to say anything that might upset anyone because I know this is an opportunity. A Black woman has been allowed into this space, and I don't want to fuck it up for every Black woman that's coming behind me. So I was coming to rehearsal every day trying to be smaller and less than because I just did not want anybody to say anything to me. And that burden was huge. And you don't know what to do. You don't know who you can talk to. You don't, because you're scared. I don't want anyone from the creative team to know because then I might lose a job, which I actually did. Because when word got out that I was not being silent about what happened to me, it was told to a room of producers that I was a loose cannon who couldn't be trusted. The girl who was attacked, my hair was touched, and I was the loose cannon, and I lost 2 jobs. So navigating that space, you don't know how to be. You don't know how to act. You don't know how to dress because you're just afraid that anything you do could be taken and used against you. None of us signed up for this. None of us asked for this. And we are all trying to figure out how to just be in spaces that weren't created for us, spaces that weren't created with us in mind. And it is exhausting. And I know everybody here has a story. I know everybody in the comments has a story like that. Navigating that space, we don't have the answers. We don't know how. We just get up every morning and do the best that we can.
And you know, going off of what Amber just said, you know, we playing the game for a lot of us is silencing ourselves, is being in these rooms to make these to make people, white people primarily, feel more uncomfortable at the expense of ourselves feeling uncomfortable. I wrote about that in my story that I shared because that has happened to me my entire career. For years, I never felt like I had a voice in any of this. Even as a stage manager, I never felt like my voice mattered to anybody in the room. And a lot of that, it was the way that I was being spoken to and like the responsibilities that I would get. So we would constantly, you know, have to silence ourselves. And it is called playing the game because fortunately, I mean, for me is that I provide for my mom. I have to pay my rent. There are so many things that I have to do. So in order for me to maintain that, I played the game. I played the game to continue this. And I think that now that, you know, I'm at a place in my life to where I can no longer be complacent when things like this happen to Amber, when things like, you know, things happen to me. I remember I was doing a show with Daniel Watts. We were in tech, and it was one of the hardest techs that I've ever did. And after a long day of tech, our producer kept me and 2 of the other stage managers after the tech rehearsal. And he looked at each one of us and told us, you know, what we can do to be better. And when he got to me, he looked at me and he said, you need to smile more. And I know that can be perceived as something that's not a big deal, but what I heard was that my appearance was threatening and that my appearance wasn't enough and that all the work that I've been doing all day doesn't matter, but you want me to just walk around and smile, so I'm a figure. I'm just a being. I'm a diversity hire. I'm not like a part of a team. I'm just someone for show. And that was very hard for me to come back to that show daily, especially when the show was with a room full of Black people. So I was made to feel like I was meant to be in a space that was supposed to have been created for us. So, you know, like Amber said, we all have stories, and you know, and the more and more we get to sit in the silence and sit and think, more stories come up, and we, you know, and we relive that shit when we think about it again, you know.
No, most definitely. I so affirm these. It's crazy because in my short professional career, both of those things have happened, and both of them have happened more than once. Whether it's smile more, you know, maybe like show up, you know, be a little more bubbly or joyful when I'm just coming to work to do my work, or wow, your hair's so interesting, that's so cool, and the hands are already in here, no matter how long I spent on my wash and go. I'm quick to grab a flat iron, and I used to resist it so much, but I know that I had to adjust to these spaces because I just want to get into the door. I want to be able to share the space with people like you, Amber, and you, Cody, and you, Daniel. And playing the game has, you know, humbled me into silence. And so I know that this is so affirming for everybody that's listening right now, our Black brothers and sisters, because it's proof that we're not alone. It's not just stuff that we're talking about with one another now, but we know that our white allies, so-called, are listening. So I think the diversity hire note is really pertinent to hit on, because I'm sure all of us have felt that at some point, whether it's, you know, oh, I got this role, you know, because I'm nice and chocolate, and you need to add a little more color to your season, or hey, it's February, let's go on ahead and do August Wilson play. So I think my question is kind of fun though, is what does it look like creating a new standard of equity when it comes to casting and hiring processes within our industry? What, if y'all were dreaming big, what does that look like?
I can say really quickly, it is changing it from the top down. I think the conversation has to stop around casting because it's higher than that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just look at Broadway as a whole. Look at the structure. Tell me how many theaters are owned by people of color. Okay, now tell me how many successful commercial producers there are of color. Okay, tell me how many casting directors there are of color. Okay, if the number to answer all those questions is between 0 and 5, that's the problem. We hide behind casting because casting is the way that we can put all the color on the stage and distract y'all from the fact that everybody on the staff and on the creative team is white because you can't see them. So let's stop talking about casting and hiring. Let's start talking about incorporation from the inception. We have to go in this thing with Black people and people of color in our minds. We have to create spaces for them. We have to cultivate programs to really help to bring new artists into the fold. There's a gatekeeper situation on Broadway. It's the good old boys club. We all know it. Like, let's talk about it. We're gonna have the conversation. It starts from the top down. Stop worrying about casting and what that looks like, because when the producing and the theater and the casting director, when all of that is correct, it's a trickle down system. You don't have to worry about the casting when everything else is in alignment.
So I think what you were saying is because I didn't realize we were going to go to church real quick.
We ain't got time. Michaela, we don't have time to put shut up. There's 4,500 people here and we're trying to make things happen. So if y'all want to know how y'all can change this shit, I'm going to tell you.
Brittany said that this was a gift, y'all. She gave y'all an answer. So I guess, with that in mind, shoot, you gave me steps. I got goosebumps off of that.
Right, before we move on from this question, I just want to say I was having this conversation with my best friend Boris yesterday, and we got to address the word diversity because we tout this word around like it is the solution to our problem, and it is not the solution to our problem. Because diversity, we've made this word into diverse meaning other. So, as being a diverse company and being one of the diversity hires, we're already made to feel like we don't belong in this company. So we have to get away from this word diversity because diversity is not the solution to our problem. It is not the solution. So we have to continue this conversation and figure out how to make these spaces, comfortable for everyone while, populating it with more faces that are brown and Black.
Well, also because diversity is not equality.
Oh, shut up.
Right.
Diversity means adding one, now it's diverse and it's not equal. I'll be in a company and it'll be a brunette, a redhead, and a blonde, and that'll equal diversity. And it's like, and one Black person. It's like, we have a diverse. It's like, no. No. We still have 3 white perspectives and 1 Black one. So it's just like, what everyone's saying. We have to. It gets frustrating when we start quoting things from the 60s. So it's like when I'm seeing James Baldwin sit in a conversation on the Dick Cavett show, and he's saying I can only go off of the evidence, right? Evidence presented to me. I don't know that the Board of Education hates me, but I see that the schools that they put me in, and I see that the textbooks that I have. I don't know if the labor union hates me, but I know that I'm not allowed in their union. So when I look at wig designers, when I look at choreographers, when I look at directors, when I look at producers, when I look at Local One, when I look at everything around me and none of it looks like me, I can't help but assume I'm an afterthought. It's not beneficial. It is not beneficial for me to walk into a space, see the creative team, and then assume that my best interest is taken into consideration if nobody looks like me anywhere. But I'm told I'm supposed to believe in this thing that I've never seen in my life. I'm supposed to believe that there's diversity in here. There's diversity, but is there equality? Because that's what we're talking about. I don't want diversity. I want equality. I want to feel equally represented as everyone else. And I know that's not always easy, but
that's what we're asking for because it's not easy.
Yeah. And I think that was in our community guidelines too. It's like, hey, we know this is about to be hard, but it's necessary. It's important.
Listen, we've been fighting our entire lives. It's been hard our entire lives. So let's.
It's been hard for y'all for 2 weeks. Okay.
And it's only hard because y'all refused to do this before.
Now
So,
imagine having to do it 8 times a week with that on my mind.
it's hard. It's hard knowing that there's very little money given to the Black press to go bring Black people into the theater. So when I go on stage, it's very ill likely that I'm going to see people look like me.
Yeah. I was just saying, and we're talking about marketing and marketing it to communities that look like us. I shared a story on Facebook, my Broadway debut. The producers brought me into the room to tout me around to different churches in Harlem so that I could go sing songs there. And I was like, why am I singing songs at churches? They said, well, because Black people don't read. We sent them the flyers, but they don't read. Like, that's how people think. People who produce Broadway, the producer stood me in a circle, 5 white men, and said, Black people don't read. Like, y'all asking about casting? Casting is the least of our worries. We are unteaching and unpacking years of racism that is filtered into the industry. It's how we're perceived. That's why when people ask me about diverse casting, I'm like, you missed the boat. Because there's so many more important things than diverse casting, which really isn't even a thing. Oh God, we're changing mindsets. We are teaching, unfortunately, having to teach people that we are worth it. And like Ruben Santiago Hudson said yesterday, yes, we want to create equitable space for all, but we also have to build our own resources. Black people and people of color, we are spending a lot of time and energy trying to help white people in white establishments and white institutions. And that is the work that we are going to do, because we are fighting for equity and equitable spaces. We are fighting that everyone should be able to work in a room that doesn't feel oppressive and stifling. But we also have to take that same energy and invest it in ourselves. We also have to build our own tables. It is not on us to keep asking for a seat at a table that was not built for us to sit at. And that is the truth. But we are going to fight for equity across the board, because that's our responsibility. It just is, unfortunately.
I think, man, there's no excuse now, I think. Like, there's no excuse, going forward out of this conversation. I even had questions about using the word diversity, because my mindset was, well, I know that our white audience members will understand what I mean by diversity, whereas it's like, we're seeking equity. We're not seeking more diversity. That's not what we're looking for. We're seeking for the standards of our industry to shift and change in such a way that we're all on the same page, that we're all starting at the same footing. So I think to head it off before we transition, I have to say thank you for sharing your perspectives, y'all. Not even your perspectives, for sharing the truth, for sharing the facts. But I wanted to note, because it's kind of been layered into every single story we've shared today, how do the actual issues of police brutality and systemic racism affect your work in the theater community on a daily basis? I know it's a heavy hitter. I know, but we're here to do a 1-2 jab. So
I remember specifically when I heard about the Trayvon Martin case. I remember specifically when I found out that George Zimmerman was not indicted. I remember specifically when Eric Garner was choked out. I remember specifically when there wasn't an indictment for Daniel Pantaleo. And I remember specifically only Black people and a very small minority of white people getting behind the anger and the frustration. And I remember going to Broadway producers when Trayvon died. I remember going to producers when Tamir Rice died. I remember going to Broadway producers when Sandra Bland died. I remember all these times, all of those moments fell on deaf ears. All of this energy that's happening right now, none of it happened. None of it. So now you have to sit in a theater with friends and family who don't share your pain. Meanwhile, you've been out there with a red bucket every 6 months, twice a year. The Broadway community gets together for an important, I know the speeches. I've been there. I didn't question it. I didn't act I was there. Every Women's Health Initiative, I was there. We were always there. And it seems like this one, I will never forget when I said, hey, do y'all mind posting this for me? And company management telling me it's too much of a political hot button.
Whew.
Black Boy Dying by George Zimmerman was too much of a political hot button. And you have to sit in that pain and shame,
right,
amongst your company members. Some might get it, some might not. Then you get into arguments of like whose family is the police officer. You start to have to, and you start having to, you have to explain yourself and explain your pain. And like I say, it was when George Zimmerman, it was the middle of the show. I found out that George Zimmerman wasn't indicted, and I broke down. Under the stage management office. Ariana DeBose put her arms around me, and I had to go back on stage with this sea of people who I don't know if they care about me. I don't know if they care about me, and I don't know that my company management or my producers care enough to make it known, because it seems like worrying about how they might feel about worrying about how they might feel about the phrase Black Lives Matter is more important than how I'm telling you and showing you I actually feel that they don't. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's, I'm glad Broadway is shut down, because if I had to be at work right now, this wouldn't be happening. If we were at work and things were at, business as usual, none of this energy will be happening. And Destiny Ray said this. She was like, it would be crazy at work. We would have to sit through this at work with a bunch of people who are still in denial or wanting to be in denial and unwilling to look themselves in the eye. Meanwhile, I have to look them in the eye and trust them on stage, but knowing when we walk out of that door, you don't have my back, because saying Black Lives Matter is a hard thing for you to say.
Because it might mess with your money.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. It's like we're cash cows still, and we might not make it to work. Your cash cow might not make it to work. Do you care about that?
Wow.
If you want to reduce us to economics, your cash cow might not make it to work.
Wow.
How much do you care? And history suggests that you haven't. History suggests that you don't.
And history right now is showing that you're interested in writing checks, big checks. But what are you actually interested in changing in your infrastructure?
Right.
Don't just write checks. For those who are listening, please don't just write checks.
Nah.
It's time to have real conversations about what we're doing to change the infrastructure.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Yeah. Hey, thank y'all for the truth, for transparency, for your openness, and I hope it's on ears that are ready. Yeah, thank you.
Love y'all.
Love you. Love you. Love you. Love you. Love you. Thank you, Michaela. Love you. Switching signers. Thank you. Thank you. This next part of our agenda is called Debunking the Exception to the Rule. There's this notion that, when you're at the top, you have a different experience with racism. So we've asked people at the top to join our conversation, and we're going to welcome them here now so that we can all witness the truth. With a long list of accolades to her name, she is among today's most highly regarded performers, hailed by the New York Times as magnetic. LaChance's theater credits are vast, including The Color Purple, 2006 Tony Award for Best Performance by a Leading Lady in a Musical, Once on This Island, Tony, Drama Desk, and Outer Critics Circle. She's described as volcanic and a spontaneous force of nature with an unfailing ability to leave audiences breathless. Tony and Emmy Award winner LaChance, welcome to the room where change is happening. Hello.
Thank you. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Lethal Tommy is an award-winning stage director and ferocious storyteller. Her credits include productions of Eclipse, Broadway, and the Public Theater, starring Academy Award winner Lupita Nyong'o, Tony Award nomination for Best Director or Play, Lucille Lortel Award, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins Appropriate at the Signature Theater, an Obie Award, Tracy Scott Wilson's The Good Negro, Party People by Universes, the Public Theater, John Kander, Greg Pierce musical, Kid Victory at the Vineyard, and so on and so on and so on. When we're all given permission to go back to the movie theaters, we'll be witnessing her latest work, Respect, the Aretha Franklin biopic starring Jennifer Hudson, Forrest Whitaker, and Audra McDonald, followed by the film adaptation of Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, starring Lupita as well. Some of her television directing includes Queen Sugar, The Walking Dead, Insecure. She's fabulous. She's everything. She's joining the conversation. Come on in, Lethal Tommy. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Hey, Lisa.
So the first thing I want to ask her, how are y'all showing up today? How are we? And I got some panel questions, but this is some real shit, and there are real stakes here, and there are real feelings here. So I want to start with that. How are you showing up?
I was great until that last question that Daniel just answered. I was getting myself centered and breathing with you, and then the way he responded to his experience about hearing about Trayvon Martin, I had to get my tissues out because that really touched me, because I still, to this day, being a mother, I'm still very angry about that. And every year on his birthday, I have a little moment for him every year, because I just can't believe that young man walking down the street by himself was killed and nothing happened to his murderer. So that really touched me. I was okay. I was holding on until that moment, but I'm here. I'm present. Happy to be here.
We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same. Though when Amber started talking about a stage manager putting their hands in her hair, I started the slow unraveling. Because, as a director, it's my honor and privilege to create a safe space for everybody who comes into our rehearsal room. And to think that, it gets violated with such impunity is very, very hard to stomach. And so that was just the beginning of what I call the unraveling.
Right. And in so many ways, man, we've all been unraveling week after week, day after day lately. And so there's a lot of year after year. Right. So exhaustion is real. I acknowledge that. And I thank you for pushing through all that and being here with us today. So thank you. The first question I have is, there's a notion that leaders at the top of our industry have a different relationship to racism. Some believe that with accolades and awards come a certain privilege that make being a person of color easier than the rest. So the question is, has your level of success affected your relationship with racism?
Well, I'll start by answering the fact that I am still a Black woman in the world. So yes, I've been fortunate enough to have had opportunities that have created a body of work for me, a career for me, but I'm still a Black woman. I mean, Oprah still got followed around in Hermes, so we're still Black women in the world. We're still experiencing life as Black women. When I'm walking outside of the theater and people aren't recognizing me, I still have to confront those microaggressors that we feel as Black people in the world. So I wouldn't say that it has changed because of my success. I will say that there have been times that I've been included into, I've been offered opportunities because of my career, because of what I've already done. But I wouldn't say that has changed any racist ideologies that I've had to deal with. They still exist, whether it be someone telling me in negotiations that, we can't give you the equal amount that your counterpart might have gotten in another show. And I know that for a fact because I've asked. There are still situations that we have to confront as African American women in this industry, within this industry. But my body of work only allows me to get a little bit further in the door. It doesn't change the racist experiences I may have once I get in them.
I would say, before I speak, I would just like to acknowledge what we call my light skin privilege. You know, I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, I am who my career looks like it looks. I think that definitely having light skin and being a Black woman in a position of power smooths the road. Mm-hmm. However, and I would say that my encounters with virulent, traumatizing, paralyzing racism in the workplace has been consistent from my earliest gigs to this very day.
Wow.
And that spans regional theater, off-Broadway, Broadway, television, and film. So even as I enter a room with this color skin, as LaShawn says, being a Black woman is, you are still on the receiving end of all of it. And I really, really wish that I could say, everybody, when you get to a certain level, it gets easier. It does not get easier, because there is something about a powerful and empowered Black woman that is very challenging for white supremacy and patriarchy.
Yeah, actually, I even feel more responsible if I can today. Even when I show up, I feel the weight of all of the women coming after me. Right. I feel like I need to make sure that I show up in a way that everyone's cool, everyone's relaxed. You're not going to be threatened by me. You know, I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. I just want to work. But I have had experiences that have not been, when I try to speak up about something on my behalf as a person, as an artist, sometimes it's met with a kind of, you know, we'll get back to that kind of energy, or, you know, we don't need you to speak up about that. But I will watch, because I'm very sensitive to this. That's one thing as Black people we become acutely aware of, is how we are treated in the same position next to our white counterparts. We're very aware of that. It's something that people need to know. So when you're very accommodating for my white co-star, and you don't offer the same sort of accommodations for me, I'm acutely aware of it. In fact, oftentimes we wait to see if we're going to get the same kind of treatment. We sort of test it and say, let's see if I ask that question, if I'm going to get the same reaction. And that just happens all the time. I remember shooting a commercial years ago for, I think it was AT&T or something. It was 3 of us. It was me, a white girl, and a blonde girl, and a Hispanic girl. And I remember just how we were treated on set. It was one of my first experiences like that. And I just remember that I was given the smallest area to change. I was given I wasn't treated the same as the other women. Anyway, I digress, but
No. This is your space. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, but to this day, you know, that's something that we have always done, and we're acutely aware of the inequity between us as actors.
Yeah. I'm not sure where y'all are from, and I'm not sure that matters, but my family is very Southern and very kind and sweet, and taught me many tools and ways of being to exist in white spaces. From how I dress to how I speak to how I dress in an airport to what time to be home. And so as I've grown up, I've realized that I have a lot of unlearning to do, because there were some of those tools that were helpful. And now I realize that there are some of those tools that have actually, if I will keep me down from the full liberation that I think I deserve, that I know that I deserve. So I'm wondering if how have you tackled the challenges of unlearning some of these lessons, if you've had to yourselves, to exist in your fullness in white spaces and say, you know what, I'm not gonna watch my white editor here change the way I speak. I'm going to dress like this. I'm going to be like this. How have you done that? Unlearning work.
I'll go. Well, to answer your first question, I'm from South Africa originally. I grew up during the time of apartheid, or apartheid, as we call it. You call it in the States. And I grew up in a colored, quote unquote, mixed race township, also known as the Cape Flats. And so, you know, the idea of, I mean, I didn't really speak to a white person until I came to, you know, to this country. That's how separated it was. But I also come from an activist background and family. So there was just never a question about speaking up about that, about inequality and about issues of race. And I have spoken up to, you know, from the very beginning. When I was a nobody director, I would ask for, you know, designers of color, Black designers, women designers, because it was impossible to do my work and feel safe if I was surrounded by white men, which is what they always wanted to do in the beginning. You know, and I spoke up about institutional racism, and I have been blacklisted from theaters, both regional and in New York. There's always a price to pay. And when I don't feel safe in a note session or in a building, I do code switch 100%. You know, half of my survival is safety assessment as a Black person. And you know, there's never a time when I'm not fighting for some kind of equality, and fighting whether it's for Black actors or for designers, or it never stops. But the way that I use language, it is a never-ending assessment. Can this person handle it? How honest can I be? Do I fight this battle now or later?
Right.
You know, so in addition to just directing the play, there is that constant analysis that's going on, and I think most people of color experience that, and it's definitely Black people.
On all sides of the process.
Every step of the way.
Wow.
Well, I was born in Florida. I lived most of my life in the South. My dad was in the military. My mom was a homemaker, and then she opened a business. But when they separated, we moved to Connecticut. And so I like to say that you know, I grew up South. So kind of my experience. But I have to say that, you know, the microaggressors that we experience, one of the ways that I push back is just by little small things, just to make myself, I try to create space for myself where I feel the space has been sort of shrunken for me. And, you know, we all know as Black people that when we're walking down the street, we do that little challenge of, are they going to move out of my way, or am I going to move out of their way? You know, that's one of them. And that's one of those, that's mine, where I refuse to move out of their way. And there have been times when people have stood right in front of me and not moved to my right or left. And that's just a small microaggressor, but something that you're nodding your heads because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
They expect us to move, to go around them. And so that's sort of a metaphor for me, how my career has been. I've been expected to move around certain things, like to be, to change direction of how I approach something. For an example, when I started in The Color Purple, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I was fortunate enough to have producers that they wanted me in the part. So they were open to me discussing my needs for childcare. But it was something that had not been established by my union or by anyone else. But I did know of friends of mine, of, you know, white girlfriends who had their children running around the theater all day long. It was no problem. And I remember having to specifically put it in my contract that I'm going to need a space for my children. And having children in this industry was an experience for me, because as a Black woman, growing up, a dark-skinned Black woman, I knew what it felt like to just have to shrink in the back and be at the bottom of the totem pole. And my way of pushing back was insisting that I had room for my children, insisting that my 2 little brown daughters were going to be present in the space. And by doing that, it also created an awareness of me being in the space that that allowed a more a little bit more understanding of what it's like to be in this environment and have certain needs as a human being, you know. So I definitely found that to be one of the ways that I push back. And then also in just worrying about and making sure I had the right people to do my hair, making sure I had the right people to do my makeup, making sure that my dresser was of color, because as oftentimes you get in these theaters and the crew is 99% white. And
Right.
if you see a Black person in the crew, oftentimes we're like, hey, how you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's always like, whoa, great to see you here. You know,
Yeah, right.
and so my pushback has been trying to make sure that those that have to work with me are of color.
Right. We have a list of people that we can bring along with us, as we heard yesterday.
Yeah.
It's our power. Speaking of our power, lately I've been really trying to acknowledge and harness my ancestral power. You know, there's something within us beyond our skin that I believe our ancestors have a strength and a guide for us. Are there beliefs that you have that help you power up when you need to?
I am a big I prayer, but I call on the ancestors, particularly the female ancestors, daily. The higher the
Yes.
stakes of this work, the more I have realized that I wouldn't be there in the first place if they hadn't
Right.
helped me get there. And so
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional, but you know, when you are feeling the most alone, that's when you have to remember that they are surrounding you.
Amen. Amen. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Definitely call on my ancestors and my higher power to help me through all of it. And I say to a lot of, whenever I speak to Black artists and just children in general, one of the things I remind them is that they come from strong tribes because they are here. Their lineage, their ancestors survived the Middle Passage. And
Right.
they are evidence of that by just by being in flesh, that their ancestors lived through that horrific experience of being snatched from your homeland, shoved in chains, put under a boat, traveled for weeks in a boat and sleeping in your own feces, didn't die. They lived through slavery, they lived through Jim Crow, they're living through, you know, a pandemic now. And now we have to deal with making sure they're not getting killed by the police. So, but you're that I tell them all the time, you're evidence of a strong lineage.
Right. And you two are evidence of strength moving through so much bullshit. Moving through. So it's an honor, and we're not done. What makes this moment in particular, right now, where we are with everything that's going on in the world, in our city, in our industry, different than 2014, different than the civil rights era? And what is our unique opportunity now that if lost, we've missed a moment of change? What's it now, and what's the risk in this moment? What are stakes?
Well, you know, I'm not a political and historical analyst, but I do think that the fact that we have been in lockdown with this pandemic has forced white people to sit with the news in a way that they normally don't or can't. You know, what was so powerful about Daniel talking about having to go to work, you know, when you hear of another atrocity, you know, and it's just only Black people posting on social media about it. This time, people are just stuck at home, so they have to absorb it. You know, the pause that we're all on has forced listening and absorbing in a way that is different. And the pause that we're all on is giving people space and time to actually show up to these protests. And so I think that is different. But I mean, white supremacy is vicious. It's petty, it's vindictive, it's stubborn, and it also is a power hoarder. So anti-Blackness is not going away anytime soon. And I just implore people to understand that, if you showing up for 15 demonstrations is actually not playing the long game, because you're in a lockdown. So you have to. Everybody has to figure out. I'm talking to white people now. How you are going to internally shift your relationship to anti-Blackness.
Right.
And it's actually dire. The good of the society depends on change.
And much to your point, Liesl, I was going to say the same thing. I think it has a lot to do with this fact that we've been in a quarantine. I do believe that people cannot go anywhere, so they're forced to watch that murder on film. They're forced to watch it. But what's really sad, and I have to bring this up about the report for Breonna Taylor's, her injury report came out, and they said that after her being shot 8 times, in the report that the investigation of 3 months, in the report it said under injuries, none. That she didn't sustain any injuries. And she was shot 8 times. But on the report, it said none. It was 4 pages long. This is 3 months of an investigation. So while we are shocked by the world, I mean, it's shocked, and they're done. People are done with this racist behavior everywhere. We have today, actually, was it this morning? Liesl, do you know, was it this morning or yesterday that it came out?
I think it was yesterday.
Yesterday, I think it came out.
I lost track of time under this.
Amen.
Yeah. It was shocking to me that this Black woman that was asleep in her bed was shot 8 times by undercover police officers, and it says none. She had no injuries. So I think that situations like this that we're experiencing, I mean, how deep can the racism go for a woman to be shot in her bed asleep? And an EMS worker, let's talk about that. The fact that she was out there saving COVID lives. Mm-hmm. We aren't valued. We aren't valued. We have been devalued for so long as human beings. No dogs, no blacks, no Jews. We are not even human beings. So for me, it's we just need to pay attention and treat each other like human beings and not by the amount of melanin in our skin.
Right. Do you guys mind if I ask one more question? I know this is longer than we expected, but this is so great.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
The work that we do with BAC started in 2016, but we've moved out of the industry and into policy spaces. We decided that we don't want to raise money. We don't want to sing for justice. We want to find the relationship between arts and policy and be in the rooms where policy is happening, or at least be connected to those people who know where those rooms are. My question for you is, what's the role of an artist in policy work? What's the role of an artist? We want to fix our industry, no doubt. And I'm glad that all of these people in different varying levels of power are listening to this conversation and are saying that they're going to be there tomorrow and day 3 to be held accountable. But what's the role of fixing the mess outside of our industry that we know needs to happen as well for the artists? What can the artists do to be in that space?
I think that we can advocate for those around us. For instance, I'm from Florida. I know that there's been problems with people responding to the census, that they feel that it's not necessary to respond to the census. So to me, it is incumbent upon me to reach out to those that I have access to remind them that if you are not counted, all of these laws and policies that are being built they're being set for the next 10 years, and you have to be counted. So I think one of the benefits that we have to even having platforms as artists is to reach out to the people that we have access to and remind them of how important it is to be counted, to vote, and to particularly vote in the local elections. That's just something that I think we all need to, particularly now, need to rally around so that we can better uplift our communities. Definitely.
And this is all of us, not just Black artists. This is all of us.
No, artists in general. I'm speaking about everyone. We need to galvanize and make sure that those communities that have suffered, like in Georgia with Stacey Abrams' initiative, finding out about I was listening to her talk last night and she just brought me to tears, but about the necessity for making sure that it's all equal, that we're fair, that we're being counted, that no one's being left out of the story, our story. So that's all I have to say.
Can I give you space, Lisa, to answer that question?
I know we're running out of time, and I think that LaShawn's articulated it so perfectly. You know, we are artists, but we are also people in the world, and you know, everybody doesn't have to do everything, but you can passionately pursue one thing if that's what you have the bandwidth for. If it's it's making sure that it's about voting rights, it's about getting out to vote. If that is what your thing is, passionately pursue that. If you are only able to make phone calls to police captains and unions every day, badgering them every day, one phone call a day, that equals change.
Know your role. Yeah.
There's nothing too big and there's nothing too small. But the key is to make your voice heard. And the other thing, and I'm going to say this to people the way I say this to young directors, is find out what it is that you care about. What in this political spectrum is the thing that you care about? Don't be overwhelmed. Don't feel like you're too small. Find out what it is that you care about and what every day you want to participate in changing. And then it's amazing what you can accomplish. And it's amazing how your work opens up, because it becomes personal and invested, and then it will inspire your communities. But if you sit back and feel overwhelmed, then your place in the society will be diminished, and your work will feel less important.
Man, truth to power. Thank y'all so much. Truth to joy, truth to Black love, truth to power. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. No, you need it.
We're near the end. I want to thank you again, Jonathan and Elizabeth, for making sure everyone is seen and heard in this space. Michaela, we kicked ass. This is awesome. I'm so proud of us for holding this space. But I want to remind people that there is a space outside of this. We understand that 90 minutes is not enough time to unpack and understand. So if you need a little more time before dinner, there is a space. We'll provide the link later. And thank you for listening. White institutions and allies, remember to be grateful for this moment. This was a gift. We did not owe you this. We risked something to tell you the truth. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, people who have prepared this day. And Michaela, tell people what they can do with next steps of how to be individually accountable.
Absolutely. Thank you, every single person who shared today. I'm without words. Now, for our active listeners out there, we've got some next steps for individual accountability. Some things that stood out in the conversation with Ms. Liesl Tommy and LaShawn's was that Ms. Liesl Tommy said there's always a price to pay, and that our interaction with our work is often monitored by a safety assessment. And that's not what our work is for. And we need you all to kind of shift things and change to start doing this work. So today we would like for you to acknowledge your own thoughts and behaviors and how those thoughts and behaviors perpetuate racism within our industry. We shouldn't be having to create space for ourselves in our own mitigated corners, but instead we need you guys to reframe and adjust your mindsets and the way you interact with us to stop racism within our industry. And then create a smaller space for these conversations later. It could be with one person, or you could create a group. There is a term from Ghana called Sankofa, which means to go back and get it. Or I think the direct translation is, it is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. right? So we don't want the Black community to be left behind in this time period. So we need to create space to continue discussing this after we leave here, whether it's with one person or a group of people. And then refer to your exit email to receive your BAC resource goodie bag. It is filled with books, podcasts, plays, links to other Google Drives that have anti-racist resources in them, and start reading. You know, choose a book, start a book club. I know there are so many book clubs happening right now. Yeah. Listen to a podcast and start educating yourself and allow Blackness to actually be a part of your daily life. There's nothing that in our society today should be rooted in anti-Blackness. So this resource goodie bag is kind of your step one. And it also has an attached action step plan that is going to be able to give you the instructions on how you can start doing this. So we did a lot of the work for you. And we didn't have to, but our heart is on for things to change. Right. And we need you guys to be as informed as possible as we get into it. We also have an Instagram template because we know we live in an age of social media activism. So if you guys complete that social media template, please go ahead and post it as your public statement about what you learned today, what you observed, what you're ready to listen to, talk about, read, and hashtag BWay for BLM will be the tag to attach us at Broadway Advocacy Coalition on Instagram. Thank you guys so much. Britton, how you feeling?
I'm feeling present, proud, exhausted, but also like revitalized. Like we got a lot of truth today, and I don't feel alone in my pain. And that feels very apparent. I feel like we all experience a piece of this hatred, and so I'm not alone in my fight. And I have ancestors, and I have guides like LaShance and Daniel and you. Yeah. You know, we're gonna be good. We're gonna be good. Thank you, white folks, for being here and being held accountable. We'll see y'all tomorrow. It's not over. Again, I want to say that we have provided 2 therapists for additional support right now. So please go to our website. It's listed here, bwayforblm.com / the outer space. There are 2 therapists there. One is a woman of color and one is a white male. So if you choose what you want there. We want to give you the option for your best support.
And thank you also to our interpreters. So
yes.
We appreciate you. You held it down, even when my mic was a little, held it down. So thank you. And thank you for everyone listening.
We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Be well. Peace.